It started on a quiet Tuesday morning in Washington, D.C., but within hours, it would become the lead story across every network in America. At 7:42 a.m., a black sedan sped through the parking lot of the district courthouse, tires screeching across wet asphalt. The driver, a man in his late 40s wearing a blood-stained shirt, stumbled out and collapsed on the courthouse steps. In his trembling hand, a flash drive. By 8 a.m., police had sealed off the area. Reporters swarmed the perimeter, cameras flashing like a storm of white noise. The man was identified as Daniel Reeves, a senior investigative journalist known for exposing political corruption and law enforcement misconduct. What no one knew yet was that Reeves had been investigating a case that would rip open the trust between the public, the police, and the press. That morning, Reeves was pronounced dead before he could speak a word. The only clue left behind? That small flash drive labeled Operation Halcyon. Detective Elena Navarro, a 20-year veteran of the D.C. Police Department, stood over Reeves' body in the morgue hours later. Her expression was unreadable, not because she was cold, but because she learned long ago that emotion was the enemy of reason. Still, as the coroner pulled the sheet over the journalist's pale face, something in her gut twisted. Reeves wasn't just another casualty in the city's never-ending cycle of crime and cover-ups. He was a warning. The flash drive, when examined, contained a series of encrypted video files and a single PDF titled Media versus Justice, The Untold Truth. But before Navarro's tech team could decrypt the data, federal agents arrived, unannounced and uninvited. They confiscated everything. National security, someone said flatly. Navarro watched as they walked out of her department with Reeves' only piece of evidence, her only lead. That night, as news anchors filled screens across America, the story had already been rewritten. The headlines didn't mention Operation Halcyon. They called it a tragic suicide. Navarro didn't buy it for a second. Reeves had multiple bruises, a shattered wrist, and ligature marks that didn't fit any self-inflicted pattern. Someone had silenced him, and done it quickly. 2 days later, Navarro received an unmarked envelope on her desk. Inside was a small SD card and a handwritten note that simply read, "He wasn't crazy. They are."
The card contained grainy footage, timestamped 2 weeks before Reeves' death. The video showed a dimly lit prison hallway, security lights flickering, and the silhouette of a man being escorted by 2 correctional officers into an unregistered cell. The audio was muted, but a faint hum of static filled the background. At the end of the clip, Reeves' voice whispered faintly from behind the camera, "If this footage reaches you, they've already found me." Navarro replayed it over and over, each time noticing a new detail. The badge on one of the guards, the shape of the hallway, the number on the cell door, B47. That was when it hit her. Cell Block B had been permanently closed in 2005 after a federal investigation into prisoner abuse, an investigation led by the same media network Reeves once worked for. By now, the media was in chaos. Online forums erupted with conspiracy theories, amateur detectives combed through old case files, and television pundits argued live on air. Some claimed Reeves had uncovered a government-run surveillance program. Others believed he had evidence of media manipulation tied to upcoming elections. But amid the noise, one fact cut through the confusion. Reeves' assistant, Maya Trenton, had disappeared. Trenton, a 26-year-old digital archivist, was last seen leaving her Georgetown apartment the night before Reeves died. Her car was found abandoned near the Potomac River, engine still warm, doors unlocked, purse untouched. Navarro traced the GPS history on Trenton's phone. Her last recorded destination wasn't home or work. It was an old broadcasting facility outside Arlington, a place the network had shut down nearly a decade earlier. When Navarro arrived, the building looked forgotten. Vines wrapped around the satellite dish, windows were shattered, and the entrance reeked of damp concrete. But inside, it was as if time had frozen. Rows of dusty monitors flickered weakly, some still running looped footage of old news broadcasts. The hum of ancient servers echoed through the empty halls. And there, taped to one of the screens, was a note written in red marker. "The truth decides who is innocent." Navarro's flashlight cut through the darkness until she reached the editing room. The floor was covered in scattered VHS tapes and torn film reels. In the center of the room sat an old metal chair, and on it, a single envelope addressed to the truth. Inside was another flash drive.
The files this time weren't encrypted. They contained raw, unedited news footage from a decade ago, but each video ended the same way, the anchor abruptly cutting to commercial mid-sentence, as if someone had pulled the plug to stop what was about to air. Navarro's pulse quickened as she clicked through each clip. The same three faces appeared repeatedly, 2 police officers and a federal prosecutor, the same names Reeves had written about in his last published piece, the men who walked free. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky as rain started to pour. Navarro's phone buzzed, an unknown number. She answered. Silence. Then a male voice, calm but chilling, broke through the static. "Detective Navarro, stop looking. Reeves wasn't the first, and he won't be the last." The line went dead. Navarro stared at the flash drive still in her hand. She knew there was no turning back. If what Reeves had uncovered was true, it wasn't just one murder or one cover-up. It was a war between truth and control, and the battleground was every screen in America. She turned toward the flickering monitor. One video file at the bottom of the list was labeled simply, "Final Broadcast." When she clicked play, the footage showed a man standing in the same dim prison corridor from Reeves's clip. He faced the camera, his voice distorted, and said, "You want the truth? Then stop watching the news and start following the bodies." The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. In the gray dawn, Washington looked like a city holding its breath, quiet, cold, and full of secrets. Detective Elena Navarro sat in her car outside the precinct, engine idling, replaying the words from that anonymous call. Reeves wasn't the first. On the seat beside her lay the flash drive marked "Final Broadcast." She hadn't told anyone she'd found it, not her captain, not internal affairs, not even the FBI agents who'd muscled into her case. In this city, information was currency, and right now, she was holding a fortune in evidence, or a death sentence. She inserted the drive into her laptop, the file loaded, glitching through static and flickers of color. Then, a newsroom, empty desks, monitors displaying test patterns, and a single figure sitting under a spotlight. It was Daniel Reeves, alive.
His voice came through the speakers, shaky but determined. "If you're watching this, they've already rewritten my death. What you'll see next is why." He clicked the remote, and the footage cut to a montage of documents, photographs, and silent clips of prison corridors, all tied to an operation codenamed Halcyon. Reeves's narration continued. Halcyon wasn't an investigation, it was a containment program. When high-profile cases threatened to expose federal misconduct, the media didn't just report the truth, they managed it. The screen flashed with a series of headlines. Murder suspect acquitted, whistleblower found dead, evidence destroyed in data breach. Each story came from different networks, but the production credits led to one parent company, Central News Syndicate, one of the largest media corporations in the United States. Reeves's voice trembled as he said the last words before the video cut out. The people we trusted to tell the truth became the architects of deception. Navarro leaned back, heart pounding. If this was real, it meant the media hadn't just covered up crimes, they'd helped rewrite justice itself. And the worst part? Every major outlet in the country had ties to CNS. She copied the footage onto a secure drive and locked it in her desk drawer. But by the time she reached for her phone to call her captain, the lights in the precinct flickered, then went black. The entire station went dark for 7 seconds. When the backup power returned, her desk drawer was open and the flash drive was gone. By afternoon, Navarro was summoned to headquarters. The FBI agents from earlier, Agents Coleman and Rourke, waited for her in a closed conference room. Coleman, the older of the two, gestured for her to sit. "Detective Navarro, you're relieved from this case, effective immediately." Her jaw clenched. "On what grounds?" "Unauthorized possession of federal evidence," Rourke replied, sliding a thin folder across the table. Inside was a printed still from her laptop, the paused image of Reeves's video. Someone had been monitoring her computer. Coleman leaned forward. "You're in your own head. Reeves was a conspiracy theorist. He fabricated evidence. Don't make his mistakes." Navarro met his eyes. "Then why did you take the evidence from my lab before the autopsy report was even finished?"
The room fell silent. Finally, Coleman sighed. "Because, detective, not everything you think you're investigating is meant to be solved." He stood, gathering his papers, and left without another word. That night, Navarro couldn't sleep. Her apartment felt wrong, too quiet, too still. Then she noticed it. Her front door's deadbolt was slightly turned. She drew her gun and checked each room, her pulse racing. Nothing was missing. But on her kitchen counter, someone had left a newspaper clipping under a glass of water. It was an old article from the Washington Ledger, dated May 17, 2005. Headline: "Inmate dies in solitary. Internal Affairs launches investigation." The victim's name was Noah Caldwell. Caldwell had been a journalist once, until he was arrested for espionage under a sealed case. Reeves' notes had mentioned him briefly, calling him the one they erased. Navarro looked closer. The article's author was Daniel Reeves. The next morning, she tracked down Caldwell's sister, Eleanor, now living in Baltimore. The woman was thin, her eyes hollow from years of grief. "Daniel came to see me 2 months ago," Eleanor said softly. "He told me my brother didn't die in that cell. He said Noah was moved to a private facility under a different name." "Do you believe him?" Navarro asked. Eleanor nodded. "He showed me something. A photo. It looked like a hospital room, except there were no windows. Noah was lying on a bed, hooked up to machines. The man standing over him was someone I recognized." "Who?" Eleanor hesitated. "The Attorney General." Navarro froze. The Attorney General at that time was Victor Lang, a man with deep ties to the media conglomerate Reeves had exposed. Lang had risen from network executive to one of the most powerful legal figures in the country. Eleanor's voice broke. "Daniel said Lang used the media to bury stories that could end his career, and when journalists got too close, they disappeared."
Navarro left the house in silence, the rain returning like a bad omen. She drove toward the old Federal Archives building, hoping to find records on Noah Caldwell's case. But as she parked near the rear entrance, she noticed a black SUV idling behind her, the same one she'd seen outside her apartment the night before. She approached the building cautiously, but before she could enter, a voice called from the shadows, "Maya Trenton." Navarro turned sharply. Standing under a flickering streetlight was Reeves' missing assistant, alive, pale, and shaking. "Maya, you were supposed to be dead." "I was supposed to be," she whispered, "but they needed me alive to finish what Daniel started." She handed Navarro a folded map, the edges damp from the rain. "They're keeping everything at a facility near Quantico, called Site Echo. That's where Halcyon lives." Navarro's pulse quickened. "Why come to me?" "Because Daniel trusted you, and because they're coming for you next." Before Navarro could respond, headlights flared from the SUV. Maya shoved the map into Navarro's hands and shouted, "Run!" Gunfire erupted, short, controlled bursts. Navarro ducked behind her car, returning fire. When the SUV sped away, Maya was gone, vanished into the night like smoke. Navarro stared at the blood on the wet pavement, unsure whose it was. In her trembling hands, the map pointed to one location, circled in red. Site Echo, restricted zone. Back in her car, Navarro unfolded the final corner of the map. On the back, scribbled in Reeves' handwriting, were 5 words that made her heart stop. The final broadcast goes live. The wind tore through the Virginia woods like a scream. Detective Elena Navarro stood before the rusted gates of a compound so heavily secured it didn't appear on any map. Site Echo. The rain fell harder now, tapping against her jacket like impatient fingers. She'd driven through the night, guided only by Reeves' hand-drawn map, and the voice in her head repeating the same warning. They're coming for you next.
Beyond the chain-link fence, floodlights swept across rows of abandoned hangars and radio towers. The sign on the gate read, Department of Defense Communications Archive. But Navarro knew better. This wasn't a government storage site. It was a vault for buried truth. She cut the padlock and slipped inside. The smell of ozone and wet concrete filled the air. Somewhere deep within, she could hear a low hum, the sound of active servers. Every step echoed like a heartbeat as she followed the humming into the dark. Inside the largest hangar, she found it, a massive subterranean data center, sealed behind a reinforced glass wall. Racks of servers blinked rhythmically in the dim light. On the far end, a single workstation was still powered on. The screen displayed a live countdown. Final broadcast, 003712. Navarro approached cautiously. The screen's reflection shimmered against her face as she read the lines of text running across the monitor. Encrypted messages, file transfers, names and locations. She scrolled until one phrase stopped her cold. Reeves' live feed. Origin, cell B47. Her chest tightened. That was the same cell from the footage. The same cell from the prison long shut down in 2005. She inserted a portable drive into the computer, copying everything as fast as the system allowed. Then, footsteps. Navarro spun around, gun raised. From the shadows, a man emerged, dressed in a suit that didn't belong in a place like this. Attorney General Victor Lang. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said calmly, hands clasped behind his back. "Daniel Reeves thought he could bring me down with a story. You think you'll do better?" Navarro steadied her aim. "What is this place?" Lang smiled faintly. "Insurance. We call it Operation Halcyon, a safeguard to preserve order. The media reports what we allow them to. The justice system acts when it's convenient. You of all people should understand that, detective. Chaos isn't truth, it's anarchy. You silenced him, and everyone who tried to expose you." Lang took a slow step closer. Reeves was a liability. He wanted the world to know that justice is theater, that the truth depends on who owns the cameras. He paused, his eyes sharp. "You could have walked away, Navarro. You could still walk away."
She didn't move. "Not anymore." Lang sighed. "Then you'll join him." He snapped his fingers. The overhead lights cut out. Red emergency strobes flared. Navarro ducked behind a column as the hangar filled with armed guards. Bullets sparked against the metal walls. She fired back, hitting one, then another. The countdown on the monitor continued. 00529. She ran toward the console, grabbing the portable drive just as a bullet shattered the screen. Sparks erupted, smoke filling the air. Lang's voice echoed through the intercom. "You can destroy the data, but you can't stop the broadcast. Reeves' story ends with you." Coughing through the smoke, Navarro spotted a backup terminal across the room. She sprinted toward it, blood streaking down her arm. The screen showed the same timer, But one final prompt appeared. Override access. Journalist ID required. Her eyes widened. Reeves' flash drive. She plugged it in. The terminal blinked once, twice, then loaded a single file labeled Justice vs. Media Final. A video began playing, live. Across networks nationwide, every major channel, newsfeed, and digital billboard suddenly flickered. The Hallian service had activated the broadcast, but this time, it wasn't Lang's version. It was Reeves' confession. His voice filled every screen in America. My name is Daniel Reeves. If you're watching this, I'm dead. The footage you're about to see exposes what they've built. A system where truth is manufactured and justice is sold to the highest bidder. The broadcast cut to clips of falsified reports, staged press briefings, and footage of Lang meeting with media executives. All evidence Navarro had recovered. Lang realized too late what she'd done. "You think you're saving the truth?" he shouted through the intercom. "You've just set the world on fire." Navarro's voice echoed through the speakers. "Then let it burn." Outside, the first rays of dawn broke through the storm clouds. Helicopters circled overhead as the entire compound erupted in chaos. Federal agents swarmed the area, but the truth was already out. Millions were watching live.
By noon, every major outlet was scrambling to distance itself from the scandal. Lang was taken into custody pending investigation. But in a twist of irony, it was the same media empire he controlled that broadcasted his downfall. Navarro sat on the back of an ambulance, silent, bloodied, staring at the rising sun. Reporters shouted her name, microphones extended like vultures. She said nothing. Then a familiar voice made her turn. "Maya." Reeves' assistant approached slowly, alive but shaken. "You did it! You actually did it!" Navarro looked at her, then at the flashing cameras. "No," she said quietly. "He did." Weeks later, Navarro received a small package with no return address. Inside was a new flash drive and a note in Reeves' handwriting. "The truth doesn't die, it adapts." When she played the file, it showed Reeves sitting at his desk, recorded long before his death. "If you're seeing this, it means the system cracked, even if only for a second. Don't let them rebuild it. The real fight isn't about corruption, it's about control. And control only works when people stop asking questions." The video ended with a single image, the same grainy CCTV hallway from before. The cell door at the end stood open again, light pouring out, dust shimmering like static. Then, in the corner of the screen, a new timestamp appeared. REC 10/18/2025, 02:47 a.m. Navarro froze. The same date and time Reeves had predicted, exactly 20 years after the first broadcast. She stared at the screen as the light flickered and a distorted voice whispered, "The next chapter has already begun." The image cut to black. Navarro closed the laptop and looked out the window at the city skyline. The world had changed overnight, but deep down, she knew the war between truth and control was far from over. Somewhere, behind another camera, another story was already being rewritten. If you thought this story was intense, you're not ready for what's coming next. Subscribe, because the next case might make this one look tame.